Welcome to the Mike White Podcast, where I, Mike White, share my conversations and book reviews through my journey to learn all that goes on in this amazing world. Buckle up and enjoy the ride.
Hey guys, on this week's episode, I'm joined by Natalie Brunell. Natalie is a podcast host, Emmy award-winning journalist, and Bitcoin educator and communicator. I highly recommend you listen to her podcast, Coin Stories, to hear from the leading voices in Bitcoin. Additionally, Natalie produces a series on YouTube called Hard Money, where she creates short educational content that is a great resource to share with people interested in Bitcoin. Nothing on this podcast is financial advice. It's for educational and entertainment purposes only. With that, enjoy the show. All right, welcome to the Mike White Podcast. Today I'm joined by one of my favorite Bitcoin podcasters, Natalie Brunell. How's it going, Natalie?
Hey, I'm doing well. How are you? Thank you.
This is really a pleasure because I started my podcast less than a year ago, and I wanted to hear people's stories, and I was also going down the Bitcoin rabbit hole. And so your podcast was just perfect for that because I got to learn about Bitcoin from all the brightest minds in the industry. And then I also got to hear their stories, which I think is really unique to your podcast. And now I'm excited to flip the script. And so people can learn a little bit more about you. You've had an incredible career so far, continue to do big things. So excited to dive right into it.
Well, I really appreciate that. Very, very kind of you. And, just like you, I'm really interested in people's backstories. I think that they're always really inspiring. So yeah, that's what motivated me to do that. I didn't expect it to become my career, but I'm so, so grateful.
Yeah, you're doing it well. So you're providing value, and I'm glad you're getting some value in return. So where are you from, Natalie?
So I was born in Poland. I was there until I was 5 years old. And then my family immigrated to the suburbs of Chicago when I was 5.
And did your parents, why did they leave Poland? Was it like the American dream type thing?
Totally. Yeah. My mom grew up really dreaming of coming to the US ever since she was young because she grew up under a communist government. And so things were really tough. Everyone had the same, and it was very little. So she would tell me stories about how sometimes she would have to wait in line for food. And by the time she got up to the front and it was her turn, they had already run out. There were constant shortages, and that's what happens in that type of government. And so, I'm really grateful that I had the parents that I had because they instilled me with a lot of skepticism when it came to government and centralization and control, top-down control. And they were also proponents of sound, hard money. But in their era, it was gold. I can't imagine, how much easier it would have been if they had something like Bitcoin. But they waited a very long time to be able to come to the US. My mom kept applying every single year for a visa lottery. And it didn't happen for them until my mom was in her late 30s. My dad was in his early 40s that they were finally able to immigrate. And that wasn't an easy decision, as you could probably imagine. They didn't speak the language. They didn't have contacts here. They would have to start over. But my mom thought that her children would get a better education and there would be more opportunity here in terms of social mobility, which essentially didn't exist in Poland. So she made that decision really for my family, and they came to Chicago. I saw them work so hard, such discipline and work ethic. They never asked for anything, no handouts. They just worked hard and played by all the rules within the system to try to achieve the American dream. And then, for those who might listen to my show, they might be familiar with my backstory, which is that they lost everything in the great financial crisis. So they worked super, super hard to be able to afford sort of that middle class American dream life. And they were finally able to take out a mortgage and buy their first townhouse outside of Chicago when I was a teenager. And then a couple of years later, the bubble popped and they lost everything and went under and had to start over again. And so watching that, I think it planted a seed for me where I felt like there's really something unfair going on in the financial system and in our government and in our economy. But I didn't know what that was because our schools don't do a good job at teaching us financial literacy, right? We don't know what money printing is. We don't know how the banking system works and really how much debt we were going into. I never even thought about the concept of money printing until Bitcoin. And so when I studied Bitcoin, it was a big click, aha moment for me. And I realized that this is what I needed to dedicate my time to.
And additionally, too, with your parents coming over from Poland, I don't know how the currency worked back in the day or what they were allowed to bring, but a lot a lot of times nowadays, if you're leaving any of those oppressive regimes, you have to leave everything back at home. You might have built an empire in that country, but if your government
Yep.
takes it all away from you, you're starting back with zero. And then Bitcoin, you can keep those keys in your head and bring your wealth with you. It's another benefit there.
Exactly. That's exactly what makes it so much better than gold, right? Because I know that there are a lot of hard money proponents that love gold, but how can you take it if you need to flee a country and you need to take all of your wealth with you? You really can't do that with gold. So Bitcoin really solves so many problems that are more prevalent around the world. We're sort of privileged here in the U.S., as many Bitcoiners have pointed out. But Bitcoin really changes the game and allows people to finally achieve financial freedom so that they can escape these oppressive regimes. And I wish it, had been around. Hopefully, I think my parents would have been Bitcoiners if they knew about it and if it existed in the 1980s and 90s when they were trying to come here.
Yeah. So you're there growing up in the Chicago area, I think, and you're seeing your parents just work really hard and setting the example. And I could imagine that adds some pressure to, like, you want to do well, you want to grow wealth and live a flourishing life. What made you go into journalism out of high school?
Yeah, for sure. I was a very determined kid because I was very aware of the sacrifices that they were making, and so I wanted to work hard and make them proud in order to justify their sacrifice. I always was determined to sort of make it and achieve financial security so that I could in turn help them and thank them, really. So with journalism, I think it was because when I was growing up, we would watch the news a lot and we would watch TV programming and movies because it really helped my parents augment their English skills. We were all learning English, and so what better way than to watch TV, movies, and news? And so things were constantly on, and because of that, I think I fell in love with storytelling. I fell in love with the hero's journey, the story arc, this idea that things can end happily, the fairy tale, the happy ending. But also, we were very engaged with current events, and so the news was always on, and I thought, what a noble profession to be able to interview powerful people, to travel, to learn about different subjects. I was really enamored by that because it kind of combined the two worlds of visual storytelling, but then also getting to learn, which I feel like I was always a very curious person. So I always knew I wanted to do that, and I pursued journalism, both undergrad and graduate. I got 2 degrees. I probably didn't need the second one, but yeah, it really taught me a lot. And my career in TV lasted about 10 years. I mean, I'm still sort of in TV. I sometimes do media commentary, although it's shifted a lot. But it was a really rewarding experience that taught me a lot because I got to meet people from all walks of life, facing different problems that exist in society. And it really, I think, put a spotlight on some of the issues that I had felt with my own family, the struggles that the everyday person feels, growing corruption, the cost of living, skyrocketing, and all of it ties back to our money, our broken money. And so that's why I'm so passionate about getting the message of Bitcoin out there, because so many people are just good, hardworking people like my parents who want to provide for their families and their kids. And they don't realize that they're essentially, running on a treadmill that's just getting faster and faster, and they can't keep up because the money's inflating away. So that's kind of why I'm very passionate about Bitcoin.
Yeah, you're doing a great job, and you're spreading it to the masses too. Because I even see you on like CNBC and all these kind of mainstream media outlets, and it's very accessible. Where some of the podcasts get down to like super technical details, and it goes over my head. But especially for just getting into Bitcoin, your educational resources, I think everyone should check out Coin Stories if they're going down the rabbit hole. But you talked about being a learner. You described yourself as a learner, and I heard that your parents, this is on the internet, so I don't know if it's true, but they would bring you and your brother around whenever they would travel. And so you got to travel a lot quite as a kid. Do you attribute that to like making yourself more curious?
Definitely travel throughout my whole life has sparked curiosity. I don't remember a lot of that travel because my parents, they ran a business and they would travel to other countries, purchase items, come back to Poland and sell those items. They had like a little shop. But again, everything was very, very controlled because of the communist government there. But we went all over Europe and there's pictures of me in different places. But I don't remember a lot of them because I was, 1, 2, 3, 4 years old. My brother probably has more memories than I do. But I started to travel again when I was actually a college student. I spent 2 of the years of my Pepperdine career in Italy. I studied
Wow.
journalism and I studied Italian, and I got to travel all over Europe. I traveled to Africa and a little bit of the Middle East, and I was just blown away. When you really experience cultures in person and you see the different walks of life, you see a lot of us are, we're mostly the same. I know that today when you turn on the news, which is the industry I spent so much time in, it really feeds off of that division and what separates us. But go around, I mean, when you break bread with people, we have so much more in common. We all just want a sense of belonging. We want to connect. We want the world to be better than, for our kids than the one that we entered. And I really got to see a lot of that when I was traveling. I saw the good of humanity. I also really saw that in my career too. I would face a lot of tragedies. I would have to cover a lot of natural disasters and tragedies and crimes. But you see the best of the human spirit in those situations, right? Because you have heroes running into those situations to help people. And so for me, travel inspired a lot of curiosity, but also this feeling that people are mostly good. People want to connect. There's so much good to be had. And I can only imagine if we had a system of sound money where the playing field was more fair and level, again, not equal outcome, but equal opportunity for people to really achieve their best and compete fairly. I can only imagine what we could create as a society. And that really excites me. And I that's why I think that doing just even a little bit to further the mission of Bitcoin, it can really help in the long run. It might be a little a raindrop or drop in the puddle, but that puddle can turn into an ocean.
And I think one of the best writers on that, how it can affect the whole the whole internet across borders, is Alex Gladstein. And
Yeah.
he is exposing the IMF, and I don't know if you're first trying to get someone in Bitcoin, do you immediately go to that argument, or when do you start introducing like, hey, this is actually good for the world? It's not just a savings technology for yourself.
I really think it depends on the audience. I think everyone is so different, and we all make decisions based on things that are so subjective, and every person is different. I have people who are really interested in Bitcoin as a savings technology. Others see it as something that is a human rights tool, and they do see it that bigger picture that it's helping people around the globe. My personal background obviously has to do with immigration, and I saw my parents, their stories made me feel like I want to do anything to prevent that type of government control. And so I think everyone has a different reason or a different catalyst for believing in Bitcoin. So I try to meet someone where they are, depending on where they're from, what they're most interested in, what they're most concerned about, really, because I think Bitcoin is a tool to solve problems, and for everyone, that problem might be a little bit different. So I try to learn a little bit about the person first before I dive into the arguments.
That's I'm yet to orange pill someone, so I'm always trying to find tactics to like try to get them go down the rabbit hole. But I found the people have to like just start asking the questions themselves and
For
see
sure.
it themselves. I don't know.
And I've learned in my process too, you can lead them to water, but they have to want to drink it. And it does take a lot of time to do homework on your own. I do my best to try to simplify things in like a minute or two when I go on camera. But it's hard to tell the story of Bitcoin in even an hour. It took me many years, many books, many podcasts to really get it. At first, I thought I got it, and I did understand the overall idea of hard money. But between everything about the energy component, the different tokens, I had to go from the altcoins to just Bitcoin. I had to go through all of these sort of mini knowledge journeys that were also ultimately so rewarding. But it is a challenge for us, right? Because explaining Bitcoin and all of the different tentacles that come from it, it's not easy to do in a short amount of time with a person.
What are some of the best resources you think if someone wants to start learning about Bitcoin to get into?
Yeah, so for me, the journey really started with the Bitcoin Standard. My mentor gave that book to me a couple of years ago, and I'm so grateful. I mean, I don't exaggerate when I say it changed my life, because when I read it, I had this very, very visceral aha moment where I go, oh my gosh, this is why my family struggled through what they struggled through. This is what happened with the government and the great financial crisis. This is what money printing is. This is what inflation is. And it's been going on for a very long time. And it was like a mind-blowing experience for me. And I became even hungrier for more information. And so after that, I just started going down the list. There are so many fantastic books in the space that I recommend, from Price of Tomorrow to The Bullish Case for Bitcoin, to Layered Money. I mean, all of the books, I read them. And Andreas Antonopoulos' books,
Yep.
Internet of Money, as well as Mastering Bitcoin, Mastering Lightning Network. All of these books, obviously it takes time, but I was so hungry for this information. It almost felt like I had been, someone had kept a big secret from me my whole life, and I was finally discovering it. And I had to go to the very bottom of the ocean, to the sand, to really, really fully understand. There are really great podcasts, obviously, out there. I really hope that mine provides some value and helps people sort of simplify, because again, a lot of people don't have that engineering, technology, finance background. I didn't. I had to learn myself and take the time. So I want to kind of bridge that gap and make it more approachable for other people who work in different industries, whether they're, other communications workers, or they're hairdressers, or they're moms at home, or they're lawyers, whatever it may be. They probably weren't exposed to a really in-depth education in the history of money or the Federal Reserve and their policies and Bitcoin. So I hope to make it a little bit more digestible. But if anyone has suggestions on things that might help the average newcomer and people that are thinking about the space but haven't invested, please contact me and let me know, because I'm going to be focused over the next couple of months at making some more introductory content, maybe going back to the fundamentals and really teaching it in a way that I would have wished something was out there to teach me in a visual way. So yeah, I always love feedback and collaboration. So if you have ideas, please reach out.
Yeah, and props to you for having NVK on a couple episodes ago, because
Yes.
I think that is more timely now than ever with these exchanges going down, and people need to know how to actually get the fullest out of their Bitcoin and be their own bank, hold their own keys. So that was a great episode.
Thank you.
And the Bitcoin standard, I have to agree, that was like my jumping off point, and I think it's great for everyone to start there, because Saifedean just breaks it down so concisely, and then it, like you said, you just want to start reading about all of it after that. And I just saw, did you just read the Principles of Economics, and what were your thoughts on that?
Oh, yes. It was amazing. I mean, really, Saifedean's brain, we're so lucky to have that brain power in Bitcoin. It's his third book, Principles of Economics, and he goes really in depth about really it's Austrian economic theory, and it talks about everything from money to inflation to society to money and how it leads to violence, especially when there's a top-down control and there's a monopoly over money. So it argues for free markets, it argues for capitalism, it talks about the difference between savings and investment, talks of course about Bitcoin. It is a piece of work that I can tell Saifedean really put his heart and soul into. So I'm excited to talk to him about it in a couple of weeks, but really taught me a lot. I've actually followed a lot of Saifedean's book recommendations when it comes to learning about economic theory, and they've really helped me understand things that, again, aren't really taught in school, because unfortunately, we're taught more of that Keynesian model, which just reinforces that the government should be intervening, that government control is more of a positive thing. And that sort of makes sense as people like Saifedean break it down. It's reinforcing the existing power structure, right? The schools are not going to teach you about something that removes their power. So I think it's really good to take in these different viewpoints, and it helps you sort of think about things a little bit differently, maybe question what you were taught, maybe unlearn a few things to learn some new ones. And I think it's really, really good to question the status quo and to try to seek truth. A lot of people, have blinders on today in society. And I think that the more that we learn, the more that we ask questions, the more we all grow and benefit. And I think debate is healthy. I know a lot of people kind of shut it out, or it all becomes kind of nasty today. But two people that disagree can still sit at a table and have a discussion about it. I know people shut each other out today, and I wish that wouldn't happen, because I think I think we would be a more productive society in general if we could just sit down and find some common ground. I think there's more common ground than people realize.
Yeah, it's just I feel like a lot of times people get personal with it and start
Yeah.
attacking the person, and we're just
Yeah.
discussing ideas, and that's a beautiful thing. And you're talking about Keynesian versus Austrian.
Yeah.
I got introduced to that with Ayn Rand.
Oh, yeah.
I read Atlas Shrugged, and it was like a light bulb moment. It's like, whoa,
Yeah.
this philosophy is amazing.
Mhm.
Are you familiar with Ayn Rand?
Yes, yeah. In fact, it was really nice. I got to attend the Atlas Society Gala and serve as MC when the Atlas Society, which promotes Ayn Rand's works around the country, they gave a Lifetime Achievement Award recently to Michael Saylor. And so, we talked about a lot of the works and objectivism, and it's really great to see that there are organizations that are trying to keep that literary work alive. I think that when you read some of it, it's so prescient. I mean, it literally describes what we're going through right now, and I think everyone should take the time to read if they haven't.
Yeah, and even just the Francisco's money speech, if they're into
Yeah,
Bitcoin, and I mean,
absolutely.
uh, it kind of reminded me because it's his response to someone saying that. So you
Yeah.
think money is the root of all evil, and he goes into what beautiful money is and how production must occur before consumption, and how you need
Yes.
a fixed standard. Like in that case, they had gold, but
Mhm.
so it's almost all the Bitcoin arguments in just a few pages.
Oh, completely. Oh my gosh, Ayn would have been a total Bitcoiner. And just, reading some of those lines about how money has corrupted society, and now people have to ask for permission from those in power. It really goes to the heart of the problems that exist. And I think so many people are aware that there's an issue, right? But they're turning to politics and they're blaming this person or that person. Lynn Alden, the brilliant analyst, she made a comment on one of the podcasts I recently watched that I thought was so brilliant. It's like we vote someone in and then we realize that's not working. So we ping pong back to the other side. And then we realize that's not working. So we ping pong back to the other side. And it's just constant, but nothing gets better, right? The cost of living keeps going up. The middle class keeps getting eroded. And so why aren't we asking that deeper question of what is truly wrong? The problem is with our money. And so I'm a really big believer that there are power in numbers. The average person, again, I think that most people are good. And if we banded together, if 8 billion people around the world wanted this form of money, we can achieve it. The so-called elites that people talk about today that, really ruffles feathers, they're a very small number.
Yeah.
We outnumber them. And so there's a power in that. And because Bitcoin is truly decentralized like the internet, and it does allow for this free interaction of value, I think that ultimately it can and will win, and we need to focus on the good, and we need to focus on how to make that happen so that it does provide more abundance for everybody. So
Yeah, and it definitely starts with education. So that's,
yeah,
just more props to you, what you're doing. Like that, we need just hundreds of podcasts. I don't think there can be enough. I know some people
yeah,
think it's saturated, but more writing, more podcasts, more debate be great. And the other thing that the money speech reminded me of this, so on my research, I saw, did you really win a catamaran on The Price is Right and donate it?
I did. Yes. So I was the social chair of my sorority one year in college, which may or may not surprise people. And I organized a mixer between the fraternity and sorority, and we went to The Price is Right. We were in the audience, and so they interview everyone before the show, and they just go through the audience and they ask you a couple of questions. And I know that they saw that I was a journalism major, so they asked me to do my best like anchor voice or something. And yeah, but it was a really funny episode because I was the first person to get called up on stage, and I am on that whole show bidding wrong.
Oh, wow.
And I remember I got up like really late that morning and I put on this little hoodie with sheep all over it. I mean, I was not dressed for TV, that's for sure. And so I had basically just given up by the end of the show. I thought, I'm basically going to be that person that gets the Burt's Bees, lip wax as a consolation prize.
Yeah, the
And
swag
then
bag.
I was the last person to get up on stage. I won a canopy swing set, and then I played and I won a sailboat. And then I got into the showcase showdown and I got to bid or pass. And then
Wow.
we both were bidding on the final the showcase, and the other person was closer in price. So we were both under. So I got super excited when Drew Carey said the price, because I was like, oh, I won the like car and the trip to London and all that. But the other guy was like $300 closer to the
man.
price. So I lost the showcase, but I did come home with a Catamaran sailboat, which I then donated to a sorority charity that my sorority sister started.
Yeah, so the fact that you donated it, I mean, you could have cashed in on that. Is that what made me think of it is Ayn Rand, because in the money speeches, just being given money doesn't provide that happiness or that value. Like, the person gets that self-esteem from actually producing, adding value. I was curious if you put that together, or why you decided to donate it.
It was a lot of different factors. I remember I at first thought I would keep it. I paid the taxes on it. But then, having a boat is not an easy thing. You can't just park it anywhere. I had just graduated into the recession, and I actually thought it would probably be really difficult to sell it. And I had been talking about what to do with this boat with some sorority sisters, and two girls had started this charity that I thought was really meaningful. And it's called the Kind Campaign. And so I donated it to them, and then I think that they auctioned it off. And yeah, it's funny to think, though, that boat was worth at the time probably between $10,000 and $12,000. It was a small catamaran, and that was the year that Bitcoin, it was 2009, so Bitcoin had just come out.
Sense.
I mean,
yeah.
I should have bought Bitcoin with it. I could have done the world really, really good with putting Bitcoin, getting Bitcoin at that price. But no, I do think it's really good to give back. I think it's really important, and I certainly, I know that if my dreams of Bitcoin come true, I would like to be able to help a lot more people. But we'll see.
Yeah, that would be, I mean, Michael Saylor would be jealous of that much Bitcoin, I think, if you would have went full in. But so I want to go back to your story. You're there at Pepperdine, I think the most beautiful campus in the world. You're also spending half your time in Italy. And it says you were part of the dance team. You're in the sorority. You're a news anchor. You were given campus tours. So what's a good career tip for time management that you learned there?
Oh, wow. I'm still figuring it out. I really am guilty of working too much. And I will say I'm actually glad I spent so much time in Italy, because Italy's whole ethos and mantra is the opposite. It's like, take it easy. There's beauty in doing nothing. We must rest, work hard, but also play hard. And so I try to remember that. And Italy helped me relax a little bit, because, especially I think when you're an immigrant or you come from a background where you don't have money or financial security, you just have this fire and drive that you want to work really, really hard. And it's not enough until you achieve what you want to achieve. And so I always had that fuel kind of pushing me. But it's also really important to recharge. And I'm trying to remember that, especially today, because, it's funny with Bitcoin and news, I basically picked two industries that are 24/7. You cannot turn them off. Something can happen at any moment. You could wake up and the price of Bitcoin has done something crazy. It feels like it's constantly on, especially with social media and the technologies that exist today. So you have to be really good about saying, okay, I have to take this time for myself, for connecting with people in real life, for my friends, for my family, because that's what is the most meaningful, especially at the end of your life. I always think of this meme, or it's like a little cartoon that I think I first saw on Joe Rogan's page, where it's this old man and he's lying in a hospital bed, and it appears like he's sick and maybe on his deathbed, and a little bubble pops up from his mind, and it says, "I wish I'd argued with people online more," or something like that. And you think about that, right? Because at the end of your life, what's going to matter is the people that you love, and that love you, and the connections that you made. And for me, family, friendship, that means a lot. So I try to do my best to manage my time so that I have time for both Bitcoin and my personal life.
No, that's awesome. And it reminds me of, I don't know if this is true either. This is from the internet, so it could be totally off, but is the only thing you collect the children's book, The Little Prince? Like, you get one of each language or something like that?
Yes, So I have them here. The Little Prince, it's next to me. I read that book when I was younger in French class, actually. So I thought I was going to study abroad in France. I was learning French for a very long time. But then the French program in my school closed and I switched to Italian. But my French teacher first read us that book. And I really liked the message. And again, I love stories. I love ones that have a very just like good, wholesome message to them. I think a lot of that's missing today in society and in the stories we're shown. And Saint Antoine Exupéry, the author, he has one of my favorite quotes actually about relationships, and that is, love is not in gazing at one another, it's in gazing outward in the same direction. And I think that's so true. It's really important to find people that have your same vision so that you can push each other. And I don't know, I really like the stories that he writes.
Yeah, that's great. And that reminds me of kind of Ayn Rand's view of love too, is to love is to value. It's not,
Yes.
When you love someone, it almost adds to your own self-esteem in a way. But
yes,
but that
totally.
book is exactly what you were talking about with like having value in relationships and friendships and loved ones.
Mm-hmm.
And this is one of the quotes from it I wanted to read. This is from the Little Prince. If it's just a summary of the story, a kind of alien little prince. He has his own planet.
Yeah.
Goes away from that planet and finds Earth, and he's talking to this one guy on Earth in the desert. But people start out in express trains, but they no longer know what they're looking for. Then they get all excited and rush around in circles. It's not worth the trouble. So it's like you said, like you could just go round and round. And for me, like Bitcoin is one of those things. I could just scroll on Twitter and read all the Bitcoin news all day if I wanted to. But I found it relating to another person, but Simon Sinek and Finding Your Why. And I was wondering if you ascribe to that at all, or if you ever think about like, why are you doing this, or what is your why in Bitcoin, in life, even if that's too deep of a question.
No, for sure. I mean, what you mentioned earlier, that quote, I think it speaks to the sort of rat race that we get into with fiat, where again, it's almost like you're working harder and harder for less and less, or for what you had before. And when I think of the future, I always think we're working towards something better and easier, more efficient through collaboration and through investment. And so for me, Bitcoin has given me a lot of hope. And I know that might be cliche at this point. I know we say a lot of these things, Bitcoin is hope. But for me, it really did provide me with hope, because I think that you need you need hope in order to have economic dignity, in order for you to get up and have a reason to keep going and to keep working hard. I mean, what is the incentive, or what is the reason that you would wake up every day and work hard and be a good person if you knew that every single year it was just going to get harder for you, or that you would never be rewarded for it, or that you would even be punished for it, right? And you wouldn't be able to buy as much, or you wouldn't be able to provide a life for your family. So it's almost like we have a backwards incentive system right now. And I think that Bitcoin providing this opportunity to change that, to create a reverse wealth transfer, to create a more fair base layer in our economic activity, I think is so inspiring, and it motivates me to want to educate people so that we're all on board and we have this life raft and everyone gets on it, so that we can make the future better, so that we can actually, I think we could achieve so much, again, if we fixed our money. I think the best of ourselves would be brought out. I think there would be a return to focusing on things like values and morals and family, which again propel us forward. I mean, I saw the other day someone tweeted a couple of articles that were written where it basically says, that we should be done with the nuclear family. I mean, why? Why are we replacing the state in the role of the family? I don't really understand that at all. So I think that Bitcoin makes me feel like we can once again return to just that feeling of we can achieve something more. We can actually achieve whatever we want to, and ideas can blossom, and but there's also a risk to failure, right? And I think that that's more fair.
Yeah.
Right now, we could pour money into projects in the form of malinvestments when they stimulate the economy, and then there's really no price to be paid for that because the folks at the top always get bailed out. It's just such an unfair system that has taken so much from the people that actually work and labor. There could be so much more entrepreneurship and innovation if it was encouraged and incentivized. So yeah, Bitcoin provides a lot of hope for me when it comes to all of that. That's something that drives me.
Yeah, and to highlight what you're saying, I just heard something from President Biden a couple weeks ago saying that the kids aren't your kids. It's like it's the government's kids or something like that. And
That's
that
wild.
the further we go to central planning and state control,
Yeah.
I think just the worse everything's going to be. Like to really have human flourishing, you need freedom, you need markets, like you said.
Yeah.
Zombie companies will be less. Like there's the Cantillon effect. If people go
Yeah.
research that, it's totally eye opening. So,
Yeah.
but all right. So back to your story. We're in college right here in Malibu, freaking
You have
living it up.
found so much. You've scoured the internet for a random.
I really wanted to go to Pepperdine, or that was
Oh,
definitely on one of the schools, just for the ocean. Like I cannot believe, like people need to Google where that campus is.
it's beautiful.
Yeah, good choice. But you end up not going into journalism right away. You're at a big time Hollywood agency. Did you want to be like a Ari Gold of Entourage?
No, I mean, that really speaks to what happened when the great financial crisis hit and that we had that deep recession. I was just telling someone the other day, my first job out of college paid about $10 or $11 an hour. I was making minimum wage. And my internship in high school, I worked at Motorola in this like engineering business internship. I made $24 an hour in high school. And so it just gives you an idea of the market. Like when my parents bought a house, all of a sudden, the value of it was cut in half.
Yeah.
And so the recession was a very difficult time. And when I graduated, I just was, I was in that place where I just didn't know what to do. And the financial aspect of everything was kind of spooking me. And my parents were going through their issues with the house. And so I thought, I was trying to get advice from different mentors, and I had worked on some documentaries in college, and so I was just kind of confused. I was at a fork in the road where I didn't know if I should go to a small market and work on camera, or if I should go to maybe a big studio and go behind the scenes and do maybe documentaries or travel shows. So it was just the reason I ended up there is I had a mentor that just said, if you're confused, you want to work in media or storytelling, but you don't know what you want to do, an agency will really help you find out because they work with every angle of the business. So the agents represent people in TV and documentaries and films and news. And actually, I ended up on the desk helping for a couple of days their biggest news agent, who represented like Katie Couric and Ryan Seacrest, Maria Menounos, like some of these big personalities at the time. And I remember I actually sat him down one day after work, and the agent life is really, it's just crazy. I mean, if anyone has seen the show Entourage, I was basically like Lloyd. It's very crazy. And
Oh,
I
I'm
was a
sorry.
receptionist so long, you would answer calls, and it was just really, really crazy. And anyway, I sat him down and I just asked him for his advice. I said, I want to be doing essentially what the people you represent are doing. And he at the time was negotiating Katie Couric's move to CBS, where she would have her own talk show. And I was hearing these conversations, and I was like, wow, I mean, how amazing. She's going to get to interview these big people. And again, she just gets to ask questions and learn for a living. I thought that was pretty cool. So I asked him what his advice was. And he basically said, if you want to be on camera as an interviewer, as an anchor, as a host, you need to be doing that right now. You need to be honing that skill and practicing and going on camera as much as you can. So go to a small market anywhere, I don't care where, and start practicing. It's about practice and repetition. And so I actually ended up going back to grad school because I had deferred enrollment. I had applied as a kind of, just in case, what should I do? I applied to Northwestern, which was back home, to get my master's in journalism. And so I basically had that conversation, put my apartment up on Craigslist to be sublet, and I was out of the agency in a couple of months, and enrolling in grad school. So.
And Northwestern, I always think of it as one of the best journalism schools in the country.
Yes.
I think of like Mike Tirico and Mike Greenberg on ESPN.
Yeah.
And you were actually an anchor on their on their campus network. Is that like
Yep.
a audition, or how do you do that?
Yeah, pretty much everyone gets to. I did the same at Pepperdine. A lot of these schools that offer these programs, they are so great about giving you experience. And it's funny because a lot of people, they say that they do for their career, they did something so different than they actually did in the classroom in college. I can't say that for myself. I literally, for 10 years and even to this day, I pretty much do the same thing I did in college. I write scripts, I prepare things, I produce, I edit, and I was doing the exact same thing in my college chair, which I think is it's cool in the sense that the more that you practice one skill, the better you get at it. It's that 10,000 hour rule, right?
Yep.
And yeah, I mean, I get to just hone the craft and see how the technology changes. Because when I first started in college, it was editing where I had to literally like move the tape on a dial, and I had to do linear editing, and and then the cameras were like this big, and then all of a sudden they're your iPhone, and people are tweeting stories out, and you're citing Twitter as part of your news report. I mean, the technology transformation has been fascinating, but the actual job of journalism, reporting, writing, producing is the same.
And were you touching all those aspects of journalism? Because were you not just like an anchor, like you got into editing as well?
Oh yeah, yeah. I am a trained shooter, editor. I did all of, there were a couple places where I got to work with photographers, which I always loved, because when someone's, able to focus on something, and I got to work with someone who's just a very talented videographer or cinematographer, the work is really elevated. But the way that it works now in journalism schools is you are taught to do everything. They kind of changed the title from journalist or reporter to multimedia reporter. So you are required to do everything. Some people set up their own live shots, especially with technology like a cell phone. It's not as difficult anymore. It doesn't require 5 people, but it is crazy to think, right? Because a couple of decades ago, the job of even like a local TV reporter, they would go out with a crew. They would have an editor with them, a producer with them, a sound person, a camera person, and then the reporter. And today it's like all in one, and you get paid less than what the reporter got paid when they had all of those people. So I think that really speaks to that technology evolution. Like it happens very quickly. Moore's law. I mean, technology takes off in one direction, and it goes faster and faster every single year. So I can only imagine what it will look like 10 years from now.
And I think you're setting yourself up though very well, though, pivoting into your own. You had the career stories, now coin stories, and your hard money show. So do you edit that hard money show as well, the YouTube series?
No, I have the most incredible editor that I've ever worked with in my career, Adam Hurlbert. He is phenomenal. He edits our pieces so beautifully. I'm really grateful to work with him because, again, when you have the ability for people to focus on what they're really passionate about, like I was never a technical person. So for me, I could shoot and I could do the job, but it wasn't like what lit a fire in me. For me, it was the interview, the story, being on camera and being able to tell it. But for other people, it's that visual component that they become so good at, and they have an eye for creative shots and videos. And Adam is one of those people. And it's just such an honor to work with him, because when you have those synergies and those energies kind of collaborating, it brings out the best in everyone. So, I have an amazing story producer who writes, and like we all collaborate together, and it's been amazing to work with them.
Yeah, I think everyone should go check out the Hard Money series on your YouTube, and it's like something that should be on Netflix. It's super well done. So
we think so too. Yeah. We think so too. Maybe someday.
Awesome. Well, my final question I wanted to ask you is, how did you kind of work up that courage to take the leap from, I mean, you were on national TV, ABC, and to take that leap from traditional media and go into your own role?
Yeah, it's a great question. I really encourage people to take chances, because the worst that can happen is it doesn't work and you learn, and you are set up for trying with a new lesson in hand and more opportunity in the future. I really believe that every failure is a lesson that presents an opportunity to get better. And if you don't ask the question, the answer is no, right? So you have to at least ask. And I think that my job uniquely prepared me for being sort of a risk taker and just trying and not being afraid to fail, because every single day as a reporter, I had to produce a story. So, they would give me lemons and I had to make lemonade. I had to make it happen. And sometimes it was easier than other days, right? Sometimes you get a story assigned to you or something crazy happened and people just don't want to talk to you. And the difference with an on-camera piece is you have to show video. Like, you have to fill a time slot in a newscast, whether it's at 5 or 10 or 11, and something has to air. So I would get into a lot of situations where, I'm trying to plead with people to just talk to me, to just give me something. And so I became very good at just knocking on doors and asking people that were probably going to say no or didn't want to hear from me, just asking them politely and kindly to consider helping me, because I'm just doing my job and I'm trying to share their story or shed light on a topic. So, taking chances can really pay off. If you don't take the chance, you'll sit there and wonder. And I think that there's nothing that you can regret more than a chance not taken, as opposed to, oh, I did that, you know what, it didn't work out, but I learned this lesson and now I'm going to go down this other path. I think that that's so much more of a productive, learning experience in life. So I encourage everyone, if you have an idea, you won't know. I mean, you have to put it out into the market for its value to be judged. And again, you will learn. One of the biggest things about my career has been, again, repetition. Some people say to me, wow, like you're able to talk in just a minute or 2 sound bites. Well, I'm able to do that because I spent 10 years doing it every single day. Again, I had to be on camera and I had to talk about something that maybe at the start of the day, I knew almost nothing about. So I had to figure out tools and sort of formulas in order to help me condense things and share them with a public that may or may not have any background in it as well. So go out there and just create, take chances. And hopefully, you can do some good with it, because I really do believe that when we're in the service of others, we are the most fulfilled and the happiest. I think when you live in a world where you're just seeking pleasure for yourself, or you're very internal in terms of your energy and what you're seeking, those people tend to not be as happy. I think the people that are the givers, the people that are creating value for others and in service of others, they tend to be the happiest and the most fulfilled. So that's the path that I choose to take too.
Well, I love it. Great insight, Natalie. And thank you so much for taking the time to come on the podcast. It's really been a pleasure. And everyone, go subscribe to Coin Stories and her YouTube channel. And Swan also has all that great content that you're always a part of. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
See ya.
Thank you for listening to the Mike White Podcast. Be sure to follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Mike White Pod, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Y'all have a great day.